The sound of a palm striking flesh echoed through the courtroom louder than any gavel ever could. For a split second, nobody moved. Not the judge, not the lawyers, not even the armed bailiffs. In the quiet, polished halls where law is supposed to rule, chaos had just taken control. And the man who caused it, Senior Officer Alonzo Coleman, had no idea. That the woman standing in front of him was about to destroy everything he thought made him untouchable. What happened inside that courtroom wasn't just a moment of anger. It was the collapse of a reputation, the exposure of a system under pressure, and the exact moment a powerful man realized he had picked the worst possible person to intimidate. Because Virginia Banks didn't just stand her ground, she ended him. If you believe power should never be above the law, take a moment to subscribe to Beyond the Gavel. This channel tells the stories where authority is tested and sometimes shattered right inside the courtroom. The air inside Courtroom 4B felt heavy enough to choke on. The scent of floor polish mixed with old paper and nervous sweat, while cold rain hammered against the tall Victorian windows outside. Each drop against the glass sounded like a ticking clock, counting down to something nobody in the room could yet see coming. Inside, the silence was thick, waiting, watching. Virginia Banks sat at the prosecution table, reviewing a stack of documents with calm precision. She wasn't a lawyer, but she didn't need to be. As a member of parliament representing Sodak, and one of the loudest voices pushing for police accountability, she had been granted special permission to assist the inquiry. As a key witness and advisor, Virginia had the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. Her charcoal suit was sharp and deliberate, her posture straight, her dark hair pulled back into a tight bun that reflected her no-nonsense demeanor. Every movement she made was controlled. Her pen hovered over a name highlighted in yellow. Senior Officer Alonzo Coleman. Across the aisle, Coleman looked completely at ease. He leaned back in his chair like the entire hearing was a waste of his time. Built like a concrete wall, with a neck thick enough to swallow his collar, he stared around the courtroom. With the quiet arrogance of someone used to people backing down, a toothpick rested between his teeth. Something Judge Leonard Vosen had already warned him about twice. Coleman didn't care. To him, this hearing was a performance. Virginia Banks was just another politician pretending to understand the streets he controlled. The court calls Officer Alonzo Coleman to the stand, the bailiff announced, his voice betraying a hint of tension. Coleman stood slowly, deliberately buttoning his jacket as if everyone else in the room could wait for him. It was a small power move, but everyone noticed. He walked to the witness box with a swagger that made several junior legal assistants shift nervously in their seats. "You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," Coleman muttered, dropping into the chair and crossing his arms. The questioning began with the lead prosecutor, Arthur Pendleton, a thin man whose nervous energy was obvious. He started with routine questions: protocol, procedures, the events of September 14th, the raid. The night a 12-year-old boy ended up in a coma, Coleman answered with short-clipped responses. Every word carried a tone of quiet disrespect. He leaned into the microphone like a man explaining simple facts. Two people too naive to understand his world. Virginia watched silently from the table. She could see the problem immediately. Pendleton was losing control. Coleman was dominating the room not through facts, but through intimidation. His size, his confidence, his reputation. He had done this before, many times. Officer Coleman, Pendleton said, flipping through papers nervously. "The official report indicates you engaged the suspect before identifying yourself. Is that correct procedure?" Coleman leaned closer to the microphone, a smirk tugging at his mouth. "The report," he said slowly, "was written by someone who's never had a gun pointed at them. I did what I had to do so I could go home to my wife. Some of us actually work for a living." A ripple of murmurs passed through the gallery. Pendleton flushed red. He glanced toward Virginia. It wasn't a request. It was a silent plea. Virginia stood. "Your Honor, if I may?" Judge Vosen adjusted his glasses, clearly relieved someone was willing to step in. "Proceed, Miss Banks. Keep it brief." Virginia stepped away from the table, but instead of stopping behind the lectern, she walked directly onto the open courtroom floor, straight toward the witness stand. The movement caught Coleman's attention immediately. He watched her approach, amused. He thought he knew this game. Politicians liked speeches, cameras, headlines. He figured she was about to lecture him. What he didn't realize was that Virginia Banks had absolutely no interest in lecturing him. She stopped 5 feet away. "Officer Coleman," she said calmly, her voice steady and clear. "You mentioned going home to your wife. That's admirable. But tell me something." Her eyes locked onto his. "Did the boy you hospitalized get to go home to his mother?" Coleman's jaw tightened. "He was a threat. He was 12, Virginia corrected quietly, and he was holding a phone, Samsung Galaxy, not a Glock. It looked like a weapon," Coleman snapped. "To you," Virginia replied, stepping slightly closer, "or to someone already looking for a fight?" The tension in the room tightened like a drawn wire. "We've reviewed your body camera footage," Virginia continued calmly. "The footage you attempted to delete? Fortunately, digital recovery is a remarkable thing." For the first time, Coleman's expression flickered. Anger replaced amusement. "I didn't delete anything," he growled. "Systems malfunctioned 3 times, Virginia replied evenly. "On 3 separate excessive force complaints." She tilted her head slightly. "That's quite a coincidence, officer. Or perhaps it's a pattern." Coleman's hands tightened around the railing. "I'm the law out there," he snapped loudly. "You politicians sit in safe buildings while we clean up the trash?" Virginia's voice didn't rise. "We're not discussing trash," she said. "We're discussing human beings." A long pause filled the room. "And a bully with a badge." The courtroom went completely silent. Coleman's knuckles turned white as his grip tightened. "Watch your mouth, lady." "Or what?" Virginia asked evenly. "Will you claim I'm a threat too?" Her voice sharpened. "Did you strike the boy after he was already handcuffed?" "I restrained him." "Did you strike him?" "He was resisting. He was unconscious." Virginia fired back. The words landed like thunder. "We have the footage, Alonso," she continued. "This act you're putting on it doesn't work here. You're not standing on a street corner anymore." Suddenly Coleman stood up. The wooden chair screeched loudly against the floor. The bailiff shifted forward but hesitated. Coleman pointed a thick finger directly at her. "You don't know me." Virginia didn't move. "Oh, I know exactly what you are." Her voice dropped to a cold whisper. "You're a coward." That single word shattered whatever restraint Coleman had left. For years he had lived in a world where people looked away, where complaints disappeared, where his badge protected him. But being called a coward publicly in front of a courtroom full of people cut deeper than anything he had faced before. His temper exploded. Coleman vaulted over the railing of the witness stand in one violent motion. The movement was so sudden the entire room froze. The judge gasped. Arthur Pendleton dropped his pen. The bailiff reached for his taser, but he was too late. Coleman stormed forward. Virginia didn't run. She didn't step back. She stood exactly where she was. "You shut your mouth," Coleman roared. His massive hand swung through the air. Crack. The slap echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Virginia's head snapped to the side, her hairpin flying loose, as her dark hair fell across her face. She staggered a step backward, her heel catching on the carpet. But she didn't fall. The courtroom erupted. "Order." "Order!" Judge Vozon shouted, pounding his gavel uselessly. "Seize him." But before anyone could move, everything changed. Coleman stood there breathing heavily, a smug satisfaction spreading across his face. He expected fear, tears, panic. Instead, Virginia slowly turned her head back toward him. Her cheek was already turning bright red. Blood from a split lip traced down her chin, but her eyes were cold. Virginia Banks hadn't grown up privileged. Long before politics and parliament, she had survived the toughest council estates. In South London alongside 3 older brothers who taught her early how to fight. She wiped the blood from her lip with her thumb, looked at it, then looked back at Coleman. And in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "Big mistake." Virginia Banks, a name once synonymous with integrity, now echoed in scandal. Her reputation shattered, her career in ruins. But beneath the headlines, a deeper conspiracy brewed. On a night shrouded in rain, a desperate meeting was set. A glimmer of hope in the shadows. Inside, Arthur met Leo Pendergast, a tech-savvy figure with a crucial secret. Leo revealed an encrypted USB, holding the key to a shocking truth. GPS logs and data, linking Officer Coleman directly to the notorious Ivanov syndicate. Coleman, a decorated officer, was destroying evidence, covering up a crime during an arrest. The weight of this revelation settled heavily upon Arthur. The stakes were higher than ever. The next morning, the Old Bailey stood as a fortress, awaiting a pivotal bail hearing. Outside, massive crowds gathered, a divided public reflecting the nation's turmoil. Inside, Virginia Banks, though exhausted, maintained a resolute gaze, ready for battle. Arthur, clutching the evidence, navigated the labyrinthine corridors, his heart pounding. He found Virginia delivering the audio files, a silent exchange of immense consequence. Against all legal advice, Virginia made a daring decision to leak the audio. The truth once hidden was about to explode into the public domain. The courtroom, a stage for justice, was unaware of the storm brewing. Suddenly, a ripple of disturbance. Phones buzzed, screens lit up. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to gasps. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. The leaked tape of Officer Coleman's incriminating conversation went viral instantly. The hearing halted. The audio played, revealing Coleman's conspiracy to hide a phone. Mrs. Higgins, the stenographer, a quiet witness, confirmed the recording's authenticity. The judge, with a gavel's decisive strike, ordered the immediate removal of Virginia's handcuffs. A moment of triumph, a battle won. But Virginia knew the true fight had just begun. Her gaze met the cameras, a silent promise. Commissioner O'Malley remained the ultimate target. National security. The words hung in the air like a threat. "He's a witness," Virginia shouted, stepping forward through the rain. "You're not an executioner. You're a police officer." The woman holding the gun agent, Griggs, kept it aimed, but her grip was beginning to shake. "Look at me," Virginia said firmly. Griggs did. "Do you really want to go down for O'Malley?" Virginia continued. "A man who would throw you into this river just as easily as he's throwing Coleman?" For a moment, the only sound on the bridge was rain hitting the metal guardrail. Then, faint but growing louder, the wail of sirens cut through the night. The real convoy was coming. Arthur stepped forward, holding the tire iron like he actually meant to use it. "Drop it," he said. Griggs' eyes darted toward the approaching lights in the distance. For a long second, she didn't move. Then the gun slipped from her hand and clattered onto the pavement. She sank down against the railing, burying her face in her hands. Virginia didn't waste another second. She ran to the back of the transport van. The doors were locked. Inside, she could hear Coleman moving. "Coleman!" she shouted through the steel. "Can you hear me?" A muffled voice answered instantly. "Get me out," he yelled from inside. "The crash, I think I broke a rib. Just get me out of here." Virginia looked around quickly. Arthur handed her the tire iron. She shoved the metal edge between the doors and the damaged lock. "Push," she said. Arthur grabbed the handle beside her. Together they forced the steel doors outward. The damaged lock resisted for a moment, then snapped with a loud crack. The doors flew open. Alonzo Coleman tumbled forward onto the wet pavement, still handcuffed, coughing hard as rain soaked through his clothes. For a moment he just lay there, breathing heavily. Then he looked up. His hair was plastered to his head, blood mixed with rain across his face. The towering officer who once dominated a courtroom now looked smaller somehow. Not powerful, not fearless. Just a man who had seen exactly how close he came to disappearing. His eyes landed on Virginia. "You came," he whispered, disbelief written all over his face. Virginia looked down at him calmly. "I told you, Alonzo," she said quietly. "I'm not doing this for you." 6 months later, the Old Bailey was packed again. This time the tension felt different. "State your name for the record," the prosecutor said. "Alonzo Coleman," he replied. "And how do you plead to the charges of corruption, assault, and conspiracy?" Coleman looked toward the judge, then slowly turned his head. His eyes locked on Commissioner O'Malley, who sat in the defendant's dock surrounded by expensive lawyers but looking pale and exhausted. Coleman took a breath. "Guilty." The word landed like thunder. "I pled guilty to all charges." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. But Coleman wasn't finished. His voice grew stronger as he continued. And I am prepared to testify fully regarding Commissioner O'Malley's involvement with the Ivanov Syndicate, including the cover-up of police brutality and the destruction of evidence. O'Malley closed his eyes. His lawyer tried to whisper something to him, but everyone in the room already knew. It was over. The first domino had fallen. The trial that followed lasted 3 weeks. It became the largest corruption scandal the country had seen in decades. Commissioner O'Malley was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The Ivanov criminal network collapsed soon after. And Alonzo Coleman, once untouchable, received 8 years in protective custody in exchange for his testimony. His badge was gone. His reputation destroyed. The life he once controlled had completely vanished. On the day the verdicts were announced, Virginia stepped outside the courthouse into a storm of flashing cameras and microphones. The reporters all asked the same question. How does it feel to win? A reminder of how all of this began. We didn't win, she said quietly. Winning would mean that a 12-year-old boy never ended up in a coma. Winning would mean I didn't have to be slapped in a courtroom for people to start paying attention. She looked across the crowd. This isn't a victory, it's cleanup. Then she stepped away from the microphones, leaving the reporters shouting more questions behind her. That evening, Virginia sat alone in her office with a glass of wine. The city lights outside her window stretched across the skyline. Her phone buzzed. A letter had arrived. From prison. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single handwritten page. Ms. Banks, I spent my life thinking strength meant making people afraid. I thought I was untouchable because I could hit harder than anyone else. When I hit you, I thought you would break. You didn't. You hit back with something I never understood. It's a truth. I deserve to be here. I see that now. Thank you for saving my life. Alonzo. Virginia folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. Then she walked to the window. Below her, the city was alive. Millions of people moving through their lives, most of them never knowing how close the system had come to breaking. And the truth was, the system still wasn't perfect. There would be other officers like Coleman, there powerful people like O'Malley. But as long as someone was willing to stand up, take the hit, and fight back with the truth, there would always be hope. Virginia finished the last sip of her wine, turned off the office lights, and headed home. Tomorrow, there would be more work to do. Stories like this are exactly why we created Beyond the Gavel. Because sometimes the biggest bullies hide behind a badge, and the strongest people are the ones who refuse to stay down. If this story kept you watching, let me ask you something. You think Virginia did the right thing by exposing everything, even after being attacked in court? Tell me your answer in the comments. I read them all. And if you know someone who believes power should never be above the law, share this video with them. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Beyond the Gavel so you never miss the next story where truth walks into a courtroom, refuses to back down.